Welcome to the Samuele Tini Show, where business, innovation and sustainability converge to drive progress. Are you ready to uncover solutions shaping our future? Let's dive in.
Welcome to a new episode. Today, we are going to talk with a visionary, a leader in sustainability, somebody that has put yourself at the forefront of the field for many, many years. So I'm very pleased to have here today Gunter Pauli. Gunter, it's such a pleasure to have you here today at the Samuele Tini Show.
Thank you, Samuele. Thank you very much for having me.
And Gunter, before we go to your impressive career and your achievement as a change maker and a speaker all over the world in the field of sustainability, can you give us a bit of who is Gunter? What really sparked your passion for sustainability?
Well, Samuele, I got going very young. And being already 69, being young means in my teens. It was 1972 when the Club of Rome published his report, Limits to Growth. And I was fascinated, not so much by the book, because I couldn't get my hands on the book. It was published only a year later in Dutch, which was my mother tongue. But it was the debate within the European Union. You had Sico Mansholt, the Dutchman, and you had him as a great proponent of this limits to growth. He, as a Dutchman, of course, spoke my language, and he was pointing that, it is impossible to keep on growing as we're growing, and we need to change these ideas, etc., etc., etc. So to me, the debate within the European Union, let's not forget that the headquarters of the European Union is in Brussels. The Commission was starting to position itself. And as a result, I had this opportunity as a young student in high school to follow that debate. And I wondered, how come there is such a discussion? I mean, it's clear that the Earth is limited. And it's clear that if you keep on growing at the same rate as we are growing, that there would not be enough. So I wondered, where is the debate? And so I kind of made up my mind that if I'm going to grow up and do something reasonable in this world, then I would work within the limits of this earth. That was it. Halte la croissance, limits to growth, question mark. Of course, we have to live and act within the limits. But I was very happy when I heard for the first time Aureli Pichet, the founder of the Club of Rome, talk about it on radio, that he said that doesn't mean we have to stop growth. It said we have to stop growing the way we're growing. It is the quality of the growth that was going to make the difference. So it was not a fatalistic proposal whereby we would have to stop and go and live in the trees again with the monkeys. It was a simple proposal stating that why don't you do the best you can with what you have and respond to the needs. And it immediately triggered a few thoughts, simple thoughts, because for the first time I heard about inquinamento, the dramatic pollution that was, of course, very visible to all of us in the 60s, in the 70s. And why couldn't we eliminate pollution? And I thought, yeah, why couldn't we eliminate pollution? So that is how I started. And that is how I've pursued from there on. And it's long before the blue economy model emerged, because the blue economy is actually a distillation, a kind of a simplified summary of more than 100 projects that I had implemented by 2008. So I'm going from 1972 to 2008. And in 2008, I could look back at this track record of having about 100 projects implemented. And I ask myself the question, are these each individual projects? Is this really an opportunity here and now? And then I realized they had some amazing commonalities. And the description of these commonalities became the blue economy.
Fantastic, Gunter. And such a pleasure, because for many of the guests we had also the Secretary General of the Club of Rome in one of the episodes before. We discussed the iconic 1972, and it has been such an important report for a generation of people, and also for us. I remember even my late father discussing it. And really, I want to thank you because you have already discussed your model, the one now you have put and distillated your knowledge and your project, the blue economy. So for the listeners that they are not maybe familiar for the concept, can you simply discuss and give it to us an explanation and what and how then the blue economy is distinguished with other approach in sustainability?
Look, I have been working for 30 years to fight for the green economy. And then all of a sudden, I realized that the green economy, of course, very laudable objective, but the green economy in practice means that whatever is good for you and whatever is good for the environment is expensive. And as an economist, I'm saying, who designed such a stupid system? I mean, who could be proposing to me that I pay more to be healthy? To pay more to have a healthy environment. I mean, how come I'm requested to pay more? And that really taught me that there is a basic flaw in the green economy model. We are always focusing in economics on being cheap. Now, if you want to be the cheapest in the world, then you have no other option than to cheat. And cheap means cheat. If you do not cheat on your workers and do not pay them very well, and if you do not take care of the environment, well, then you have the chance to be the cheapest. But if you are taking care of your people, you are taking care of the environment, and you pay your taxes and don't go and hide in tax havens, well, then you will never be the cheapest. So, what is our model? And I said, we have to change the model. And the model is the blue economy. What does blue economy really mean? Instead of trying to be the cheapest, I'm trying to generate the most amount of value. So if I have a cup of coffee, I'm not just selling the coffee. I will have the coffee drash. The coffee drash I will use to farm a mushroom. The waste of the mushroom gives me a chance to feed my chickens. So I have coffee, mushrooms, and chickens, all with the same. I do not need anything additional. That's the blue economy. So the blue economy actually became a report to the Club of Rome. It has been translated into 60 languages and is in, well, today 8.5 million copies. The Club of Rome doesn't talk about it because it is a kind of a juxtaposition. It's kind of the opposite from what limits to growth proposed. I'm proposing that there are no limits. I'm proposing that there is so much opportunity to use what you have all the way. And when I'm saying there are no limits, then I can put numbers to it. When you drink a cup of coffee, what you're ingesting in your body is only 0.2% of what the farmer harvested. So if I use 100%, I'm doing already 500 times more. Not only do I do 500 times more in material, in weight, but if on top of that I earn 5 times more, but that means that I'm doing 2,500 times more with the same coffee harvest that was harvested before. And that is the positive message. Unfortunately, there are people who love the drama and who love the negative message. So the blue economy became really for those who like to look positive and forward. And with all knowledge that we have planetary boundaries and all knowledge that we're often going beyond the limits, we know that inherently applying the blue economy means that we can respond to all the basic needs of everyone, including those who are sharing the world with us. I mean, the 100 million species that we very often don't even know by name. So we can not only respond to people's needs, we can eradicate poverty, but we can put nature back on its evolutionary path. And that's the fundamentally positive message of the blue economy. And immediately you can see that I'm challenging, the mainstream green doomsday thinking, and that I'm clearly opting for a positive approach because it is positive, and with now more than 200 projects implemented, I know it can be done.
And it's really interesting, to discuss and see. As us at the show, we give voice to the diverse people, and we want to understand a bit more. That's why also we ask you to come on board, because it's important to understand and also to challenge a bit the negative part and see the opportunities that are there, a more positive message. So can you explain, Gunter, a bit in practice how you are how you are extracting more value? I work in coffee and I know how much waste, for example, just using the ask and other at the bottom of the grassroots level, already you are capturing more value for the farmer. But explain us a bit more in practice how your theory and the practicality work.
Well, for me, the key is that I'm not here to write a book and tell others what to do. I'm here to do it and then share the experience with others to say, if I can do it, you can do it. So the mushroom experience, for example, is already repeated 6,000 times. And people say, oh, what a success. And my response is, no, it should be done 1,000,000 times. The potential is to do it 1,000,000 times. Why do I only get to 6,000, 7,000 people? And this is where we need to challenge the status quo. The challenge of the status quo is not to give you one anecdote and saying, look at this wonderful case you have there. Oh, isn't this really sympathetic and charming and great and encouraging? No, I'm going out and saying, we have 6,000 people who are already doing this. It is not a case. It's a trend. Second, we are saying that we're going industrial. I mean, this was the experience with Novamont in Italy. You know, when Novamont started, where I was chairman for about 10 years, when Novamont started using cardo, thistles, in order to make bioplastics, and put one factory, second factory, a third factory, went from 100 to 200 to $300 million. You know, we all of a sudden could demonstrate this is not an exception to the rule. This is an industrialization in process. When we argued very feverishly with mining companies that the mining waste they leave behind is actually a waste that is going to affect the earth for hundreds of years to come and will generate asthma. I'm not there to put the finger negatively against and aggressively against mining companies. I'm there to say, but let me take the dust and transform that into stone paper. And today we have 1,000,000 tons of stone paper in production. So it is not like, oh, here we have a little sheet of paper, it's called stone paper, and maybe this is an opportunity for the future. No, ladies and gentlemen, there is 1,000,000 tons being produced. We're going to go to 10 million tons, and we are industrializing. And I think that is how we challenge status quo, is by making it clear that it's not just an interesting technology, not only done by a few determined people. No, it is trending. And you know, we see this very often in the social media. What is trending? Well, I want to show the trending of the new business models that are successfully being applied throughout the world on all continents, and not just as an anecdote or as an interesting case.
Which is often the case, to showcase as conference and stuff, a very small, tiny, and cute startup, which maybe is difficult even to scale. And it's such an interesting discussion. We had a guest that put the industrialized restoration and regeneration, and it was something. It sounded like an oxymoron, but we are really putting forward that. So we need to scale impact and change the way we are looking at opportunities. And how do you argue against the critics of that, saying, is it maybe too little, too late? Can we really scale? Which are the downsides that sometimes your approach can have?
So I have a very, very uncomfortable attitude for some people. I don't listen to the critic. I don't listen. I'm sick and tired. I've heard it all. During decades, I've heard it. I mean, I have heard within the Club of Rome so many times of, oh, and these statistics and oh, this analysis and look at this report. And, I have made a conclusion. analysis leads to paralysis. We know since 1972 the problems. You can make it more sophisticated. You can make the analysis more detailed. I don't need analysis anymore. I need action on the ground. And it's the only way to to really be able to turn things around is everyone focuses on getting things done. And you know, Samuele, it's the key. You need to have projects that have impact, that are easily understood by people. When people touch the stone paper that we manufacture, and when people realize you can throw it into the water, pull it out again, you cannot burn it, you can actually keep it, then all of a sudden we realize that this waste becomes not just an interesting product, it's a product that is a third of the capital investment of a normal paper mill. And we don't use water anymore. You don't have to use the statistics. Instead of using 6,000 tons of water for 1 ton of paper or 600 tons, we use zero. And all of a sudden, people realize that water as the most precious source has been eliminated from this equation. And you see, this is what we need to see. And that is why I remind people that in 1986, when I read for the first time a report from the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, I said the only option is zero emissions and zero waste. I mean, that's the only option. It's not reducing. Let's not try to cut back. I mean, when you're a thief and you're caught by the police, how impressive would it be when you tell the judge you promise to steal less? He will say, this is impossible. I mean, come on, you guys, you can't steal. And that is exactly where we are today. We have companies who are pretending that they're polluting, but they promise to pollute less. No, you can't pollute. And the reason that you shouldn't be polluting is not because you're harming the environment. You're losing the opportunity to generate good. Now, I mean, there's one thing, and philosophically, there's a major difference between doing less bad and doing more good. Ethically, we shouldn't be doing less bad. Ethically, we should be doing more good. And this is what's lacking today. We're focusing so much on doing less bad. We're focusing so much on analyzing the boundaries, whereas we know that since 1972 we have them. So let's do everything we can to turn it around.
And such a powerful reflection, and it's really challenging how you can approach a problem from a totally different perspective and how you see, and also getting the value out of what is maybe is waste or pollution. And I want to ask you about now you have also after you have done many things, but now you have also focused about marine ecosystem and pollution and climate change. So now you are also working at Porima. So how your venture and your work and try to address the challenges in these critical ecosystems?
You know, one day I realized that everything we do for the environment is related to land. And I'm face to face with this massive marine pollution, particularly the microplastics. And I realize that if we look at the space on Earth, not the surface, but the space on Earth where life exists, the marine environment is 91%. Land is 9%. So how come we have forgotten the marine environment? I mean, we have 3 people who touched the bottom of the sea and they didn't stay for more than 20 minutes. And we have hundreds of people who go into space. We have millions of people who dream about going into space, and we have hardly anyone dreaming about going to the bottom of the sea. How come we have lost any enthusiasm like, Jacques Cousteau had with the Calypso? How come we don't see the sea anymore? And I started very modestly to move into this after the 2011 tsunami, which devastated not just Japan, but also in Thailand and Indonesia. And I realized that one of the reasons why the tsunami was so devastating was because we had eliminated the mangroves, this natural buffer. And so I asked in a meeting I had in Indonesia with the Minister of the Environment and the Minister of Marine Affairs, I asked, why aren't we having a huge program to regenerate the mangroves? And they said, it's too expensive. And I said, but how can it be too expensive? I said, that's because your business model is focusing on making it cheaper. And so I asked them to give me the benefit of the doubt. And a long story short, 4 years later, we had regenerated the mangroves in Surabaya on the island of Java. We had succeeded in using the regeneration of the mangroves as an opportunity to reintroduce shrimp farming without having to feed the shrimps. Now, shrimp feed is 60% of the cost. And we were doing shrimps that were not being fed with artificial feed, which, by the way, is usually slaughterhouse waste. So here I have 87 hectares of land along the coast of Surabaya, where we succeed in regenerating the mangroves. We reintroduce shrimp farming. We are outcompeting all existing shrimp farming on a cost base, but the carbon sequestration in the roots of the mangroves is solidly enhanced thanks to the cutting of the young twigs of the mangroves, and we feed those twigs to the sheep and the goats so that they reduce the overgrazing of the drying land behind the mangroves. So all of a sudden, we start weaving these benefits together. Now, if you're giving twigs to the goats, they give you double the amount of milk by eating the same amount. All of a sudden, the economy is growing thanks to mangroves, from the milk all the way to the shrimps. And that is something that convinced the Indonesian government to say, how come no one is teaching this at university? How come this is not a course at university? Just like we asked the question when we had this great success of Novamont, how is it possible that still the engineers, the chemical engineers, learn how to make plastics, but they don't learn how to make plastics that degrade in the sun, the air, and the sea? I mean, how come we have a biodegradable plastic in the soil, but that biodegradable plastic in the soil does not degrade in the sea? Because we just do not teach it, because it's known. So there was a drive from my side to scale the implementation by ensuring that young people know how to. And when you explain to kids that by knowing how to manipulate the molecules of a polymer of a plastic, all plastics can be biodegradable in the sun, the soil, and the sea. Of course, who in their mind would still make plastics that don't degrade? I mean, who would still do it? It's like when I introduced in the island of El Hierro in Spain, in the Canary Islands, for the first time, the concept that you only fish the males and you will never fish the females. And they're looking at me and saying, but I mean, we do not know how to differentiate a male from a female fish. So I riposted and said, if you don't know the difference between a male and a female, what do you know about life? You know nothing about life. I mean, it seems to be one of the most basic things. Now, as a female fish gets older, she produces more eggs. So why would you ever want to eat a big female, a grandma, una nonna? Why would you ever eat a grandma? You don't eat grandma. You will eat the smaller fish, the younger fish. And this is how we can scale from a vision to a reality. I think it's very important we put the finger on there. You need to talk to the young people with very clear principles. And it seems obvious that biodegradable plastics, defined by the European, is a plastic that degrades in the soil. And then they're talking about the problems of microplastics in the sea. It's obvious you're going to have the problem because you didn't solve it at the educational level. This is how we need to operate, by securing that you have a vision that becomes absolutely obvious for everyone beyond this debate and discussion.
And thank you, Gunter, and thank you for sharing these wonderful examples that are really, putting also a tangible and practical into your ideas and your work. And when you were discussing, so you have demonstrated with case, the Indonesia one, the other, the Novamont. I remember at the old days when I was very young, 98 is the first plastic that was, I put myself on, made by maize, if I recall it correctly. Done, I
Corn,
think, by
yes.
done by this predecessor of Novamont. That was called, I think, Montedison, if I remember correctly.
Montedison with Raul Gardini.
Yes.
The laboratory started, yes.
And I want to ask, we have examples, the shrimp one, the mangroves. I also do mangrove restoration. I will go to discuss that with you. The stone paper, which I touched in Amsterdam last year for the first time in my life, and with a startup, and I was impressed. But I want to ask, okay, you have this strong case. You have demonstrated the impact in the many projects you have done around the world. But which barriers? Why it is not scaled? Why people are not discussing about it? Which barrier do you think exists to scale your approach globally? And why not many business, they are not coming on board? Or maybe, let me rephrase, they're not coming on board as fast enough.
Look, there is a hard reality that let me use a little description. If you have a donkey and you are decided that this donkey will play the violin, most likely, if you're very committed, you could succeed one day to have the donkey play the violin. But I think we both will agree it will never sound great. I mean, Yo-Yo Ma will do much better on cello. We agree. So why do you want to teach business today the sustainability that I'm doing? Don't teach it. Forget about them. I mean, they're out of date. They're out of their minds. They have one objective, which is money. They have a second objective is keeping shareholders pleased. And then the third is to sell themselves out as soon as possible to even make more money with the money that they made. So to me, in that model, you will never have a blue economy. So don't try. Don't try to make the donkey play the violin. Why don't you go to those thousands, millions of young people who are very keen to demonstrate they can do better? I mean, I I must wake up in the morning. You must wake up in the morning, and we realize we're in a very polarized world, one against the other. I am right, you are wrong. I'm the best, you're the worst. And I'm saying, as long as we try to introduce novel business models by saying, I am good and you're bad, then you will never succeed. We need a philosophy that is saying whatever we have done to date is the best we could and the best we imagined, but we can do much better. And I'm going to do much better, not to make you look bad, but because I want to have a future for me, my family, my community, my life. And this is where we can make a major difference. The obstacles, the no. I dedicated a chapter in my book, The Blue Economy, on why big companies will never be able to do it. So don't even try, but go to the young. And that is the reason, Samuele, that I dedicated 33 years of my life to write 365 fables, inspiring young people to do things which for the parents and the grandparents is a pure dream. Actually, it goes beyond the dreams of the parents. And this is where we need to make the difference, Samuele. Don't ask the question, why are the others not doing it? Don't ask that. Focus on how can I inspire this next generation to demonstrate that they can do so much better. And the benefit will be for all, even those who you don't like.
Definitely. And thank you for this provocation and this really important concept. And it's also what we are trying to do a bit here with the young people. And I want to ask this question that really came to my mind when we were discussing. Our podcast is based in Africa. So we are the emerging world, the younger world, the world that sometimes in some conference and discussion, I argue that we still have a chance to not to follow the wrong models and we are still a bit fresh, although, much damage has already been done. How do you see the perspective for emerging markets and how also maybe we can foster new models like yours here with the younger generation?
Samuele, let me talk again through action. Most of my initiatives are not in Europe and none are in America. My initiatives are in emerging markets, Pacific Islands. My initiatives are in Africa. My initiatives are in Southeast Asia. My initiatives are in Latin America. I mean, you have to go where the needs are the biggest. And that means where the opportunities are the biggest. So I am convinced that emerging markets have an immediate application for our kind of proposals because everyone sees the benefit now, not in 5 years, now. So, I always say that don't ask people who live in poverty to be patient. I mean, I'm sorry. If I can't feed my kids today, don't ask me to wait for 5 years. But if someone tells me that I can take the waste of the coffee and in 2 weeks I can have my first mushroom harvest, I'm going for it because no one is offering me a solution with a product that I can eat in 2 weeks' time. So as a result, we're very pragmatic within our network of the blue economy. We identify areas where we can have quick quick wins like a mushroom, or quick win like a spirulina microalgae, a quick win like a larvae of a fly that turns into protein, 300 times more protein in 5 days by using fly larvae instead of using a cow. So why would I want ever to have artificial meat from a cow when I can make protein, animal protein, within 5 days in a way that no cow could ever do? And so this is where we need inspiration. And that inspiration I always look for in nature. So I'm inspired by a fly larvae. I'm inspired by a mushroom. I'm inspired by a spirulina microalgae. And I think this is what we need to put in the forefront. What is it that inspires you, that offers you such a convincing argument that even if you don't have money and even if you don't have experience, you can make a difference in a couple weeks' time? That is the message we need. And therefore, I very often tell my friends that if you need a business plan, then you are lost. You will not be able to make a difference. If you know how to make Excel spreadsheets, then you will not get anywhere. What you need to know is, how do I turn a situation in 2 weeks around? How can I show that you can go from poverty to abundance in a few weeks' time? And so once you have done that, then you've triggered a learning, then you've triggered a desire to make a difference. And so in order to pass to action, you need to make certain that people realize that the action is not simply a good idea, but it's something that you can put into action yourself.
Fantastic, Gunter. And without knowing you before discussing, I think we have, in the past 20 years, I've tried to do that with communities in Africa. And I'm rejoiced that my models, at least, are not at the scale that you have done. But it's really what I also wrote in many proposals. They were not very liked for some donors, but really say quick wins for communities. And it's such an important one. And looking into the future, I want to ask you this. What are your most ambitious goal? I mean, you have, really ambitious goal, but where do you want to take your model, your work? How do you see your next 10 years? And
Well, you have touched upon it already. I didn't respond very, very bluntly, but it's the oceans. I mean, it's about time we do not dedicate all our efforts on the 9% of land space that we have for our living, but it's high time that we focus on these incredible opportunities. And that starts by learning to know who's living there. I mean, can you imagine that from all the DNA that we know today, less than 1% comes from the sea? Less than 1%. That means we know nothing. I mean, if you don't know the DNA, first of all, we do not know the difference between the sex of a male and a female fish. So, I mean, we're pretty dumb. But second, we do not even know what other life is there. And so my focus is, amongst others, to be able to navigate the seas without a drop of oil. And we've proven that is possible with Porima. Second, we want to demonstrate that we can discover life in the sea beyond anything that we have imagined on land before. And the biodiversity of life, all the way to the sequences of DNA, will give us such a bolstering insight of what we can do together to make a difference in this world for everyone forever.
And fantastic, Gunter, for this incredible episode, because it's really challenged some ideas, some discussion. We also had in the past in the podcast, and really gave a different model, and a model that really focus on the positives and the how. I think is also an important food for thoughts for many of us. And as the last step, I want to say, what if you can say to the people that are listening, and say, oh, wonderful, Gunter, and see, what's one immediate, let's say 2 weeks, actionable step that they can take?
Well, the first thing is to me, my request is very simple. You take time every day to tell us a great story, an inspiring story to a child. And if you take the time every day for the rest of your life to tell a positive, encouraging, inspiring story to a child, I tell you, a great world will be created immediately. Unfortunately, all the news today is about Europe is going to war. I mean, how could that ever be inspiring to face the problems of social exclusion, of hunger, of lack of quality of water, and all the other things we know about? We need to change the dialogue. And since these governments are all talking about war and about aggression and applying it as well in practice, we need to start by spreading the word. And the word is tell a great story, 1 or 2 minutes only, every day to a young person, and a new world will emerge in spite of all these negatives from those politicians.
Thank you so much, Gunter, for this message, and thank you so much for this powerful episode. It's been an honor and a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you,
so
Samuele.
much.
Grazie a te.
Thank you.
Are you satisfied after this wonderful episode? Let's continue together our sustainability journey.